Hey, family, welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable. I am your host, Rodney Butler. This evening, we do not have the pleasure of having my usual co-host, Kevin Evans, on. He is engaged in another activity, basically. He may come on a little bit later, but he may not. But either way, he knows what to do if he come in, and we'll be ready to go. Today, we have a very special guest on. We have Miss Lauren Wallace, who is running for Superior Court Judge, Douglas County Superior Court Judge. And we are going to interview her like we normally do. So sit back and listen and get ready to get to know Miss Lauren Wallace. Lawrence, tell our audience a little bit about yourself before we get started with the questioning, please.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Rodney, for first of all for inviting me on the roundtable. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm excited to tell everybody why I'm the best candidate for this job and why they should vote for me. But I haven't often taken it all the way back to tell the whole story about who I am, where I came from. So I'm originally from Paducah, Kentucky. It's as far west in Kentucky as you can go. And I grew up there, family of four. I have a younger brother. And went to Murray State University, which is also in Western Kentucky. And my degree's in history and legal studies. So I always knew that I would go to law school. But between college and going to law school, I was helping facilitate a dropout reduction program for the county school system back home. So it's called Open Campus, and it's for at-risk high school students who are at risk of dropping out of high school. And instead of them dropping out, they're able to come to that program and get the credits that they need to graduate. So it's an excellent program and increased the graduation rate for the county school system. But then I went to law school, and that's how I ended up in Georgia. I graduated from John Marshall Law School in Atlanta in 2011, and I took the July bar. And during my third year of law school, I had done a year-long internship with the DeKalb County Solicitor General's office, and I loved it. It was really fast-paced, and it was not dull. I mean, there was always, something going on, and also relatively low stakes. So I was trying a ton of cases. But anyway, so I graduated law school in 2011, took the July bar, and the solicitor's office hired me immediately. And so I started working in the solicitor's office in September of 2011. And during that was under Sherry Boston in DeKalb County. She was the Solicitor General at the time. And then she was elected to DA in DeKalb, and I got the invitation to come work with her in the District Attorney's office in DeKalb County. So during my time in DeKalb, I spent that on a trial line, which means I'm trying a ton of cases. So I've tried over 60 jury trials, and in court, usually 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks of a month. And during that time, I had worked with Dahlia Racine. And then, as you know, she was elected DA here in Douglas County, the first black female to be elected DA in Douglas County in 2020. And she brought me out to run one of her units in the district attorney's office. And so that's how I got to Douglas County, and it just quickly felt like home, and everybody was so welcoming, and I just immediately felt the connection to Douglas, and here we are, Rodney.
Great. Well, that takes care of question number one. But no, that's good. That's good. I forgot to.
I don't know if you have experienced me on other forums or debates, but I am terrible about sticking to the time frame because they'll only give you like 60 seconds or 2 minutes, and I just can't do that. But so this I feel like is more suited to me.
Absolutely, because it's an interview. So,
Right.
and I usually during pre-recording, the pre-show, like we just did before we went live, I usually tell the guest that, that you're probably going to answer the next question, uh,
Mm.
anyway, because they are designed that way. So,
Hmm.
anyway, you
I may
did it.
want to elaborate.
Yeah, exactly. So in an interview, we want you to elaborate. This is not a forum, it's not a debate or anything. It's just an interview. So absolutely relax and just answer the questions how you think you should best answer them. All right, so I'm going to move to what motivates you to seek a position, to seek the position as Douglas County Superior Court judge.
So I am a lifelong public servant. I let's I, Going back to childhood, I have always been a helper. Always interested in service to the community. I was in a sorority in college, which is heavily involved in community service, even high school. And when I was choosing, and of course the dropout reduction program, that's service to the community. But when I was trying to decide my career path, what type of law I wanted to practice, I knew that I wanted to choose public service. And so that's another reason why I went into prosecution. And so, because I have, over the last 13 years, gathered all of this experience in the courtroom, I now want and hope to further my life of community service from the bench in Douglas County. And I'm hoping that the citizens will allow me to do that.
Great. Next question. How do you interpret and apply the law, particularly when faced with ambiguous or conflicting precedents?
So so you have to take the way you make a decision. And by the way, this is how prosecutors, lawyers, this is how we all make decisions in the law. And then I would just continue this on the bench. So you're reading the facts of the case that you're dealing with, or you're in a hearing and both sides are presenting their side of the story and their interpretation of the facts of the case. And then you apply that set of circumstances to either statutory law or case law. And ideally, the statute would lay it out on what the type of bright line rule is to apply to the situation. If not, then you go to case law. And so I'm old enough to have learned how to use the law library, but now we use LexisNexis or Westlaw. Those are the online data library databases, and so we go and look up their search engines, and you can find a case that is on point with the facts that you're dealing with. So there's not a ton of interpretation because other judges have already interpreted the law, whether through trial court level, the Court of Appeals, the Georgia Supreme Court. But if we can't find it in our state law, we can also look to other jurisdictions that have dealt with the same issue.
Great. So basically, there's a lot of use of modern technology.
Yes,
In that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So
and there's tons of great ways to search
mhm.
for the case that you're looking for. Um, so really, you're kind of matching it up. You're matching your facts of the case that you're dealing with another case that has similar facts, and see how those judges applied the law to those set of facts.
Do you feel that we should utilize, the old way of that, or the new updated, using technology or falling somewhere in between, or it's just very nuanced for you? How do you feel about that?
You mean the old way, meaning the law library?
Right, law libraries and stuff like that, and
So
versus.
no, no, I do
Okay,
not
good.
want to go back to the law library. No, I think it's much more efficient
Yeah.
to use these online databases because it's the same information, and so there's this concept called shepherdizing, and so because there's lots of cases that you can dig up. I mean, tens of thousands of cases just on one particular subject. And so, even though you might find a case that's on point, you have to look at how other courts have treated that decision. So, maybe it's been overturned later on. And so, the online databases will automatically do that for you, whereas the old way of doing it, you had to do it yourself. And there's just much more, there's a lot of room for mistakes in the old way. The newer way is much more efficient and accurate in finding what you want to find.
Well, yeah, that's good, and because it's some people. Well, look, we were born in 1900s, right? So
Yeah,
we know what time it is,
that's right.
but
The
some
last millennium.
exactly. I love to tell people we were born in 1900s, but anyway, I asked that question because number one, the when we interview judges is usually the quickest of all the interviews that we do because there's a bunch of legal law stuff and people don't quite get it and we don't even get it sometimes. So what we do, we are very, myself and Kevin, we're very, very probing into the questions, but then you
Uh-huh.
get to the law stuff and it's like, okay, let's just go to the next question. But but it's good to what the people know about that question is that you, even if they didn't understand every single thing you said legally
Hmm.
about all the legal stuff and precedents and everything else, but what they do know about you right now is that you are somebody who believe in moving with technology. As it advances, then you advance with it. So
Yes.
that's why I asked that question.
Yes, no, thank you so much. But also, I would imagine that our interviews are a little shorter because we can't answer questions about
Exactly.
how we would, lean or rule on certain issue on most issues actually. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The incumbent ones for judges and stuff like that maybe last a little bit longer because they're in there and they got to answer to some stuff. But
Right.
but you're absolutely right. Okay, next question, Lauren. Can you provide an example of a difficult legal decision you've had to make in your career and how you arrived at your decision?
Sure. So I am, as a prosecutor, you have to make tough decisions every day, all day. So it's not just one specific case that I can think of off of the top of my head. But I can tell you how I reach decisions when I'm looking at a case and trying to decide what's the best thing to do or what's the best route that this should take. Because in my everyday career, I have to look at the facts of the case. So what happened? I have to look at the criminal history of the defendant or the person facing the charges, to see, is this a one-off thing or is there a history of this of criminal behavior? So you can get a better understanding of who you're dealing with, what you're dealing with, and a lot of times we're dealing with uh, defendants or suspects who have mental health or substance abuse issues. So, so then I have to decide, is this someone that would benefit from, um, like if the person who's facing the charges has never been in trouble, or been in very minimal trouble, and what they've done is not the crime of the century, so in that case, maybe the best thing to do would be to route that to a pretrial diversion program. So, and we run that through our office. That's different from the accountability court programs that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, such as drug court and veterans court, mental health court. So there's a difference between accountability courts and who you would put in those programs. That's different than the people that you would put in a pretrial diversion program. So pretrial diversion, the defendant would not plead into the program. They're not pleading guilty. They're essentially agreeing to some terms with our office that says, if you pay your fee, if you do your community service, if you take some classes geared toward whatever crime you've committed, then that satisfies our objective in order to try to get, to try to fix the underlying problem of what was causing this criminal behavior, and feel like this person has learned from their mistake and can get back on the right track.
Lauren, I'm gonna cut you off a little bit right now because
I could go on for years.
No. We're going to go back to what you just said, but because the next question, remember what I said, it kind of flows over. The next question is talking about impartial. How do you ensure your impartiality and fairness in your decision making process? You already started talking about your decision making process. So what I want you to do is, since every county does not have, every place does not have these accountability courts, but we are lucky enough to have that court in Douglas County.
Yes.
I want you, since you started talking about it, because the audience for the Black Man's Roundtable is very, very, very interested in knowing, what judges think about, the accountability courts, drug court, veterans court, and those things, because a lot of the viewers of the Roundtable falls into those categories,
Yes.
and so or they have family members. So talk about not only what you think about, because I'm not even going to ask you the next question because you kind of already answered it. So I wanted to give you an opportunity right now, because it seems like you're very passionate about it, to talk about the accountability court, what you feel about it and what you think about the current accountability court here in Douglas County and how it's operating.
Okay. This is gonna be a lengthy conversation though, because it's it's so nuanced and there's so many aspects to it. So, so that's the pretrial diversion that I was talking about, and that's more for people who have little to no criminal history, relatively young, and haven't committed anything terrible, and the victims would also have to they're allowed, the victim of the crime that was committed would be allowed to give their input as to whether or not the defendant is allowed to do that, and restitution would also need to be paid back if that was an issue. So then there's the accountability courts. And to your question, how I feel about them, I think they are fantastic because, as I mentioned before, most criminal behavior happens because of mental health or substance abuse issues. And so if we can treat that underlying issue, then hopefully we can curb the criminal activity in our community. And I'm not immune to these issues either. I have family members that have dealt with substance abuse and mental health issues. And I think a lot of people in our community either deal with it themselves or have family members that deal with it. And it's tough. And so most of the time they're kind of at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. And so they are looking to the criminal justice system, whether that's right or wrong to do. They're wanting somebody to do something. And luckily we have these programs in place in order to give resources to the people that need them. And so, Rodney, let me tell you about because I know there are people who are really good about talking in theory about, what they will do or what they've, how they think things should be. But I'm really good at actually doing this work. And so I can talk about it all day, but let me tell you how I am involved on a daily basis with the accountability courts. So I run our dropout reduction program in the district attorney's office. And that's a huge responsibility because literally every felony crime that happens in Douglas County goes through me. And so when someone is first arrested, like they're arrested maybe the night before, early that morning, and then we'll have bond hearings first thing in the morning. And so I'm in court every single day. My opponents are not. And I get to hear some of the facts of what happened. There is an officer there that tells you what happened. Sometimes we've had a chance to speak with the victims of the crime to get their side of it. I have the defendant's criminal history, and I have to make a decision as to whether or not this person should get a bond at that very moment. But because I am the first one to know what happened, the first one to talk to the victim, the first one to see the criminal history, I'm also the one making the decision about how these cases should be routed. So should they go to a trial line attorney to handle in the regular course of prosecution? Or should it go to the pretrial diversion program? Or is it appropriate for one of these accountability courts? And we have started in Douglas County, we call it a reentry bond. I actually don't know why it's called that. It makes sense to some others it doesn't make sense. But I think it's because the defendant who gets a reentry bond is reentering the community. And so they started that because it used to take a really long time for a defendant sitting in jail awaiting to enter into an accountability court. The process just takes a really long time because it's not just one person making a decision. It's a whole team of people. And so it's hard to get, 5 to 10 people on the same page. So, and there's just a lot of steps. The defendant needs to have stable housing. They need to be in a place where mentally and physically where they can receive these services, because there's clinicians involved. It's not just lawyers making decisions. These are people in the health field, and so my job on the reentry team is to help get these people out of jail faster. Because what we know is while they're sitting in jail awaiting to enter into an accountability court program, they're losing their housing, they're losing their jobs, they're losing whatever support system they may have managed to get before they were arrested. And so it could take around a year for somebody to plead into these programs. Now, with me and our reentry team, we're able to get people out of custody around 45 days, which is it's still a long time, but it's a whole lot less time than what it used to be. And the reason it takes even 45 days is because of those things I mentioned with, making sure there's reliable housing for them to go to, because you don't want to put them back out into a community in the same around the same people and things and places that were contributing to their addiction or bad behavior. And so we want them to be successful in these programs, and so we're getting them set up to re-enter the community and hopefully have a success story. So I get to do that every single day. So I'm the only candidate that has that much of an inside track into these programs. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So, and look, it's okay. I wanted you to elaborate on that for a reason, because like I said, the listeners and viewers and followers of the Roundtable, they are passionate about the accountability court.
Me too.
course, as well as you are, and I want it for you. And I know that you have a captive audience right now with that. But I also just wanted to say that, several months ago, there's a little research and different things looking into the accountability courts.
Right.
Since this is the Black Man's Roundtable, I want for you to really talk about how there was definitely we found some discrepancies as far as
I know where you're going with
fair,
it. You
as far
take
as
it.
being fair and equitable with
Right.
the demographics of who's in jail and who gets. So it is. So what I want to do, I just want to make sure, because I can tell you already know exactly where I'm going.
I do.
But
I do.
what I want my audience to know is that what I want you to kind of talk about is making sure that my audience understands why there is such a discrepancy with, for instance, Black men who are who get the privilege, or not the privilege, but the blessing almost of going to accountability court versus the percentage of what they represent inside of the jail.
Right. Okay. So what you're talking about is we somebody figured out, I don't know who it was, but somebody figured it out that the demographics of the participants in the accountability courts did not match the population of the demographics in the jail
Right.
or our community. And so that's another good thing about me being in the position that I am and this reentry program. Now, there's several reasons why there is that discrepancy, but we understood that we could at least make some headway and make a dent and try to make it more equitable and a closer make the numbers closer to what they should be. So we started this reentry committee and reentry bond process. Not even, I don't think it's even been a year. And so once that came to the forefront, and because of the position I'm in, I make it a priority every day in bonds to identify people of color that would be a good fit for these programs. So we have changed those numbers to where they used to look like, the numbers were much higher for participants among white men especially, and then white females. And there's a few reasons for it. I think that one, being just more aware of what was going on and who we were putting in the program, and trying harder essentially to get
Now,
people
Lauren,
of color in the program
Lauren,
helps.
when you say being aware, you're talking
Yeah.
about the person, the victim, or not the I don't know, the person that's broke the law. You're saying that them being more aware, or
No,
you guys being more aware?
us being more
Okay.
aware
Okay. All right.
of who was getting into the program, but also there needed to be a little more awareness on the participant or potential participants part, because like if you're originally taking white men, well, who's using with the white men? Other white men. And so they're telling their friends, hey, I did this and it helped. And so I think that the same message was not getting to to black men, for instance. And so there was that discrepancy of, the black men didn't really have anybody to lean on and say, hey, this was a success for me, you should try it. Where the white men did, they had people who'd been in the program before and were saying, yeah, you should do it. And there was a little bit of mistrust because it's not just us that have to allow them to do it. The participant, like, they have to choose to do it too. You can't just say, hey, you're going to do this program now. They have to want to do it and decide to be in the program. And people of color weren't always making that decision. Because here's what some defense attorneys who will do, and the way some of them think. Not all of them, of course, but some of them think that these programs are really hard to do. They're a very intensive, at least 18-month program, most of the time up to around 2 years. And they allow you a couple of mess ups, but if you really mess up or you mess up too many times, then you get kicked out of the program and you go to prison. And so if the defense attorney thinks there's no way my client's going to be able to do this, or I can get a better deal through the trial line, like maybe they think it's just easier to be put on probation and to do a inpatient drug rehab versus the accountability court program. And so a lot of times they'll just choose to take a different route than accountability court. So it just depends on who you're talking to and what choice they make. But I can tell you that people involved in the accountability court programs and making the decision of who's acceptable for the program or not, there is a very conscious effort to include people of color.
Okay. I'm not going to beat that one too much because it'll take up your entire interview, and I don't want to do that, because you definitely, part of this interview is making sure that you get out to the people, what you can do as a Superior Court judge here in Douglas County. But one thing that I would, so what I can tell you, Lauren, is there are certain, when we interview people here at the Black Man's Roundtable, we let them know that there are certain races that once the person get into the seat, that we put a lot of our equity, sweat equity, and everything that we have into these, and the accountability court is one of them. Yes. I hear everything you're saying. The listeners, the viewers of this is hearing everything you're saying. But what I can tell you, is that I know this audience, and one thing is that that will never really go over very well. That we're not talking to, that these black men that's been involved in the criminal justice system is not talking to each other. We are the quintessential hookup people. We love we hook up. So we so that's and also a lot of it has to do with advocacy. A lot of people, like you said, we can't say that the criminal justice system is full of people with mental issues, and then at the same time expect for the people to advocate for themselves the way that someone without so like you said, a lot of it they need to come forward and do a lot on their own. But something telling me and so many men that look like me that and look, we could be totally wrong, but perception is reality, and you know that.
So when I'm saying, I'm mostly talking about the drug court. With the mental health court, you're right. A lot of and mental health court is tricky.
But Lauren, not to cut you off, but I also believe that that a lot of the people in the other courts, like drug court, a lot of these people have mental health issues.
They do, and so they've been vetted by clinicians. By the medical people, to determine which one is the higher need, and you can address both. Like while you're in drug court, you can also address any mental health needs that you may have. So they're addressing both, and when I'm saying like that they're not talking to each other, I'm saying that I'm not saying they're not talking. I'm saying that because historically it's been more white men in these programs,
Right.
it's trickling down to other white men that this is a decent program. But because there's not as many black men or black women in the programs, it's not trickling to as many people. Do you see what I mean?
Right. And Lauren, from where you sit right now, I'm going to ask you in a minute, how would you, to close out that whole thing with the accountability court, is as a judge, how would you deal with knowing the facts that we know right now as people come into your courtroom? But you've talked about a lot how you've dealt with that in your current day to day, because like you said, every day you're working with this. So I say that to say, so okay, let me just ask you that now. Like, what would be different as a judge in looking at the disparities between this the demographics? But I will say that I think that the people, like we said that a lot of the people with that, whatever court they're coming in, whether it's drug court, mental health, or whatever, right? A lot of people have mental health issues, and it's hard for them to advocate for themselves. So that being said, I think that it is the people who are working, like yourself and other people, who should look at those numbers before they get so out of whack. I don't have to tell you that those numbers, the disparity between who gets into accountability court demographically is a huge disparity with those numbers. And I think that we should, the people who are working behind the scenes like yourself, should be able to look at that quicker. And that's why I hate when people say, well, I don't see color. Well, no, you need to see color, because
You
if you don't,
absolutely
if you don't, all this stuff get out of hand. And then it's
right.
like, so yeah. So
No, you would never hear me say that, because you have to see it in
you have
order
to.
to change things.
Exactly. So
And
as a judge, Lauren, I want you to close this as a judge, and you talked about how you look at it from a lawyer perspective and what you do
yeah.
every day, but now you're a Superior Court judge.
Sure. So, as a judge, you have the ability, you're presiding over negotiated pleas. And so, remember when I was saying about a defendant who may decide to take an easier route by taking, probation and, just doing some outpatient treatment or something like that. Well, if I feel like they are going, based on their history, if I think, well, this isn't going to outpatient treatment isn't going to quite cut it, then I can say no. I'm not, as a judge, I can say no. I'm not going to accept this plea, and I can help push the option of the accountability court programs instead of taking a probation sentence. Now, sometimes probation is going to be acceptable, but I think if there's a better option with the drug court or veterans court or mental health court, then I don't have to accept that plea. I can suggest one of the accountability courts. Also, I think that that getting the information out, like educating people more about the program, I think would help. And I think if we could get even defendants who are out on bond, and they're thinking about doing the program, or maybe they're out on an accountability court. Out on a reentry bond. They could come watch a drug court day where they're seeing these success stories and hearing what people have to do, so they have a better idea of what to expect when they're entering the program. So I think educating the people and having them come watch what's happening, and also just pushing it more from the bench. Of course, I can't make anybody do the program, but
Right.
I do want to say, since those numbers were brought up, now they're close to 25% for everybody. Like it's very even, which doesn't fix the problem though, because the jail population is not even. It's not
Right.
25%, black male, white
Right.
male, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I'm saying that to illustrate that there has been a lot of work done to try to correct that issue, and we're not there yet, but we've made a lot of headway.
Great. Great. Well, Lauren, I guess I don't have to tell you what the Black Man's Roundtable will be watching, coming up with, as far as one of our top legal things that we are going to look at, and that is
I would love
definitely.
it if I would invite the listeners of the Black Man's Roundtable to come to the courtroom and see what's going on, and
Oh yeah,
see who's making what decisions and how they're making those decisions. And I think when you see things firsthand, it's a lot different than
yeah.
what you may have at once thought.
You will be proud to know. I can't remember the exact year. I want to say 2017, I think, that when I was still teaching school, we're out for the
Yeah.
summer, and I spent
Uh-huh.
almost my entire summer doing exactly what you're saying, going into all of the different
That's
courtrooms,
great.
and just, so yeah, we will definitely do that, and we would definitely stay on top of and I'm glad you've done some work, but there's a whole lot of work to do,
There
because
is.
the numbers, exactly what I'm talking about, when I'm
I
talking about a
do.
few months ago. And so and you've closed the gap, of you've contributed to closing the gap,
I have.
and and you guys ought to release those information if you can. I don't know, but yeah.
I mean,
And
I would think so. It would the accountability court programs have that information, and I would think
got it.
that they could.
Okay, great. Okay, next question. How do you plan to handle cases with? And by the way, I've been taking out questions that you've just been answering by
Yeah.
just talking, and that's good though. That is good.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you've answered like four of these things. How do you
I
plan
might
to
have more
handle?
though. You just never know.
Yeah. How do you plan to handle cases where the law conflicts with your personal beliefs and values?
So I think that first and foremost, my job is to follow the law. Whether that conflicts with my personal beliefs and values or not, my job is I'm not running to be in the legislature to make the laws. I'm running to be a judge to follow the laws. And I still have rights as a citizen, so I can vote for candidates that I believe will fight for those ideas for me in the legislature. But ultimately, whatever the law is the law that I have to follow. Um, if for whatever reason something comes up that I feel like there may be a conflict, um, of fact or of law, or in my mind, that I don't feel like I could preside over this case fairly and impartially, then I would need to recuse myself. I don't expect to have to do that very often, because I will be able to do my job in following the law. But if for some reason that issue does come up, then I would have no problem acknowledging that this is something that I cannot handle fairly, and recuse myself for another judge to handle.
Okay. Next question is, can you describe a situation where you had to make a difficult decision under pressure and how you handled it? It does not have to be legal. This is strictly a question for the listeners, the viewers, to just know just a little bit about who Lauren Wallace really is. So if you could just answer that, legal or not.
Okay. So again, this is what I do every day. And I'm the only one that does this every day. I'm the only, of the three candidates, I am the only one that makes these tough decisions every single day, and I have done that for 13 years. So every morning when I am deciding on who to give a bond to or who not, or how much, or, I'm making a decision based on what's best for everyone involved in the situation. So I am having to make these decisions on the fly. I don't have a police report when I have to make these decisions. I don't have time to sit and study. And as a judge, you're going to have to be able to make decisions quickly. And that's why I'm the best choice, because this is something that I'm very comfortable doing. And also, I'm doing it every day, but I'm familiar with the rules of evidence because I've tried so many cases. And when you're on the bench, you're not going to have time to say, "Ooh, I'm going to need a minute to look that up." And so I'm making tough decisions very quickly on the fly every single day, Monday through Friday. So I don't have a police report to study. I'm just hearing the officer testify about what happened. And then I hopefully have had a chance to talk to the victim, but not always, because sometimes the victim's in the hospital and we can't contact them. So we may not know the extent of the injuries at that point. We may not have a lengthy recitation of their domestic violence history at that point. And so I am very adept at making these decisions. And I think I make pretty accurate decisions based on the information that I'm given at the time, based on criminal histories, based on facts and evidence. And I do it every day. I do it quickly, and I most of the time do it very accurately, based on what's best for the community as a whole, the defendant and the victim, everyone involved.
Okay. We have one last question, but I want to go back to a question that you pretty much answered, but I just want you to reiterate a little bit more, because I think my audience will appreciate this, even though you've hit on it. And so if you repeat yourself, that's fine as well.
Okay.
What steps would you take to ensure that all individuals appearing before you in court are treated with dignity and respect?
Well, that's just my general demeanor. I think everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. Even people, even people who are accused of a crime. They're not, even if they're found guilty, even if they're pleading guilty, that's something that happened on one occasion that they're being, accused of doing. That's one action. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a terrible person. It just means that they have done something bad. And so
people's worst moment shouldn't define who they are, is what you're saying.
Thank you. That's an excellent way of saying that. Yes. Yeah. And so I'm also a big proponent of, upholding the decorum and the integrity of the profession. And so, I'm not interested in, having a circus for a courtroom. I expect everyone to behave and treat everyone with dignity and respect when they're in my courtroom, and I will do the same. As a leader, I set the tone for the courtroom, and I think others will follow.
So you won't be, since we established that we were born in the 1900s. You won't be a judge. You won't be a judge, Ito.
No,
Making the circus.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Oh man. Okay. All right. The very last question, Lauren. I tell you, you answered about 5 of them. And that's good because you you obviously flow very well, because these questions, we believe they flow very well. But the last question that we have is, can you provide an example of a time when you had to demonstrate integrity and ethical behavior in your legal career?
Sure. So I want to give you one example of how I am trying to be fair to everybody and upholding the integrity of the profession, the law, and I also, well, let me just start with that. So when I first transferred to Douglas County, and I'm running the dropout reduction program, so I'm seeing every single file that's opened in the district attorney's office, and I would have to review these files. And I noticed that the way they used to do it, when an attorney would get a file, the very first thing that you would see when you open the file is the mugshot. And I thought, that shouldn't be the first thing that we see when we open a file, because all kinds of biases can come into play if you're seeing, race, gender, age, any of that. And so if you're trying to make a fair and impartial decision, you want to just read the facts of the case, and look at the facts and the evidence that are before you, and try not to bring in those biases. And so now sometimes you have to have that information for identity purposes, and so it couldn't just completely come out of the file. But what I did was I went to Dahlia and talked to her about it, and thought, maybe we could put it at the bottom of the stack of papers that you're looking at when you have to review a file, instead of the very first thing that you look at. And she agreed, and we made that change. And so since then, we now review the file in a different order. Sorry. What are we talking about?
Yeah, no. You answered it. You answered it. You answered it. And because it's little things like that. We know that if all else is given, given other than identity, then we know that, there's been countless studies that that equity happens then.
That's right.
I tell everybody, I don't care nothing about your equality, right? And but what I do care about is equity.
Right.
Okay. And so
Right.
when we are blindfolded, and when we are all our senses are taken out of it. That's why I don't like that whole thing about, well, I don't see race. Well, okay. But when we actually don't see race in all the other identifiers, then all the numbers all of a sudden tends to fall into place. And that is what,
How are you going to be anti-racist if you don't see color?
right. You have to see it. In order,
Right.
if you tell me you don't see race, then one thing I know is, if you are a white person, in America, especially a white male, but white person in general, then I know that you cannot be my ally, because you
Yeah.
don't see race. I need for you to see race. I need for you to see the
Right.
the the inequity, at the accountability courts and every place else. I need for you to see that. And
Yes.
so yeah, you really answered, the
I hope
question.
I have conveyed that I do see that and I see the
Yes.
issues and I am very much an ally.
Well, look, Lauren, you talked about what you've 25% all the way around, with accountability court. That I know that was not the case, 8 months ago.
Absolutely.
And so that's what this audience want to hear, and that's what they want to see, is that you do see us, because
Yes.
one of the most unseen people in America is black men. And that's why we have people ask, well, why do you have the Black Man's Roundtable? Well, I just said it. So you're going to see me. I can't afford to keep the black silent. Okay.
Right.
I just can't afford to do that.
No,
It's not the pH.
I get
Yeah.
it.
It's not the pH. It has to be known. So, Lauren, before we get out of here, let the audience know it's wrapping up. The 21st, well, I'll let you do all that. You're the one running, but let the people know how they can reach you, how they can donate, whatever you need. Let the people know.
Sure. So I want to thank you, first of all, Rodney.
Absolutely.
So I want to take this minute to let the viewers know why I'm the best candidate. Because we have some very nice people running. We have people running that care about the community, as I do. But what separates us is the extent of the experience. Lawyers and people who are in the criminal justice system want and need a judge who knows how to try cases. Remember, I've tried more cases than more jury trials than my opponents combined. Also, I am the best candidate because I have spent the most time in the courtroom. I'm in for the last 3.5 years. I'm in court Monday through Friday every day. Before that, I'm in court 3 out of the 4 weeks of every month for 10 years. That's a lot of time spent in the courtroom. My opponents may be able to speak about what they would do, but I'm not just speaking about it. I'm the one that's actually doing it. I'm doing the work. I'm making the hard decisions. I'm the one that is ready to take this seat and start on day one. And I think if you're hiring for a job, you want somebody with that experience.
Right.
So I'm asking all the viewers, if you haven't already gone to the polls, and I feel like it's a relatively low voter turnout at this point, but we still have until the 17th, May 17th, for early voting, and election day is May 21st. So please go to the polls, take your friends, tell everybody that you know to vote for Lauren Wallace to be your next Superior Court judge.
And Lauren, I may have missed it. Did you put your website out?
Oh,
How
I
they can
didn't.
reach?
So
Hey, we're here to help.
I got caught up in it all. You can reach me. I'm very active on Facebook, a little less active on Instagram, but I'm on those social media sites at Lauren Wallace for Superior Court Judge. And I have a website to where you can learn more information about me. You can help sign up to volunteer. You can donate money. Campaigns are not cheap. So that's www.wallaceforddouglas, and that's WALLACEFOR Douglas.com. And you can find out lots of information there, or just, reach out to me on social media as well. I've talked to several people that way. You can also find me coming up. Let's see, I've got, I think, about 5 events on Saturday. I will for sure be at the Tractor Supply on Fairburn Road from 2 to 5. So come out and see me there. You probably need some plants to buy for Mother's Day. They love a good rose bush. So come by Tractor Supply on Fairburn Road and see me and get something for Mother's Day. And then I will also be at Taste of Douglasville on the 18th. So lots of opportunities to get out in the community and meet and greet. But also I'll make time if you want to just reach me on social media and we can make contact that way.
Great, Lauren. And I can definitely attest to that. You are very, very approachable, easy to talk to.
Am.
Yeah,
I
very
love
easy.
talking. That's been the greatest thing about this campaign is getting to meet so many wonderful people that live in Douglas County. So
Yeah. So if you see her out there, approach her and talk to her and ask her any questions that you didn't get to hear here on the Black Man's Roundtable. So Lauren, we appreciate you. It is 8 o'clock, so we know that after an hour, people kind of fade out. So
yeah.
so it's 8 o'clock. But listen, it was a great interview. Enjoyed having you here, and look
Thank
forward.
you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I like talking to you. So
Yeah, we've had some conversations, and they've all been cordial and very good conversations. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you teaching me some of the things that you've taught me as well, and I know that goes both ways. So with that, Lauren, good luck out there, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, this is the Black Man's Roundtable. We will see you out in them suites and them streets. Peace. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook.
1,